I remember I was hired, and within a few days we had what we don't call our annual meeting with all of our operators. We don't call it like a convention. We call it a reunion because it does feel much more like a family here. But I had to stand up on stage and introduce myself, and the one thing I said was like, it's the coolest thing in the world that I get to work at this brand because my kids love it, you know. So I couldn't even believe I got to work here, much less, I mean, this role, give me a break. I would have never.
This is the Gies Download, a podcast from the Gies College of Business at the University of Illinois. I'm your host, Tim Sinclair, and our guest today is Julie Fussner, a graduate of Gies and the CEO of Culver's, a rapidly growing chain of restaurants with over 1,000 locations. And as you'll hear, Julie's role has her focused far less on their products and far more on their people. I'm curious because I found that a lot of people who rise to certain positions of influence or power or authority or whatever didn't ever plan to be there, like originally. Was this your goal when you were in school at Illinois, when you were studying? Was this the plan? And if not, what was it?
This wasn't my goal a year ago, I don't think. So, oh, I honestly, I was so much less prepared in school than kids seem to be now, or young adults seem to be now. So I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I did think business for sure. So in high school, when I would take business classes like accounting or whatever, they seemed to make sense to me. Felt like a good path. And then obviously Illinois is a great school for that. And the fact that I could get into the business school, I was like, okay, this is seems like a really good path. But I took my first accounting class there and I was like, well, it's not accounting for me because I could barely keep up with that. So we knew it wasn't that. So, obviously the beauty at Illinois in the business school is you get such a wide variety of exposure to different things. And so what seemed to be the most interesting to me was like organizational behavior, organizational administration. So I thought, well, maybe human resources, but I didn't find a job in that really suited me. And so I actually went into sales at first just to take a job. I mean, you're getting out of college. It's like I needed a job. It was a great job. Um, Not for me for the long term, but great in that it exposed me to other functions. And that's what opened my eyes to the idea that I really liked marketing. So in this sales role, we were utilizing marketing materials and things like that. And I was like, well, I think I want to be creating more of those versus just the executing on the sales end. And so I went back to school and got my MBA, concentrating still in organizational behavior, but also marketing. And so that's what got me into marketing. And then my whole career was there. And then since I've been here, I just thought the CMO role was what I had wanted to always do. So, since I had figured that out 20 years ago. So I loved the idea that I was in that role, and that was my goal. And then our CEO announced a retirement and I was like, "Oh, now what?" And it did not even occur to me that I would be the right person. And so I didn't go for it at first. And so it's kind of crazy that it actually happened. So then had further discussions with our founders and realized maybe I could do the job. And we'll see. We're 3 months in, so still to be seen.
Well, I've been to Culver's in the last 3 months, and it's still fantastic. So far, so good. We'll go back to your time at Illinois eventually, but I am curious about the transition from CMO to CEO and what sort of prepared you for the CEO role from being a chief marketing officer, and what maybe you feel like you're still having to learn or you're having to draw from other parts of your education, because while they're both in very important roles, I would assume they're also in a lot of ways pretty different.
Yeah, I would say what probably prepared me the most was watching other CEOs that I have worked for or other leaders and how they do things and what I thought was really effective in what they did and potentially areas that I thought maybe we could do better. And so I happened to work even here at Culver's for a couple of really great CEOs. So I would say most of what I learned was from them. On the tactical side of the parts of the business that marketing typically doesn't get in as involved in, like real estate and development, and to some extent, maybe operations, although we're pretty involved there. I've really leaned heavily on the people on our leadership team that are experts in that function. So I've never minded admitting when I don't know things. And so I just ask them a million questions and they're kind enough not to act like I'm stupid. And so that's how I learned that part of it. But really, the learning how to do this, I think, was from watching other people do it and taking what I think works really well and works with my personality and then applying that. But the rest of it is I'm just learning on the job and trying to figure it out as I go. I try to read, I try to, you know, study things online. And so, and then I ask a lot of people around me how they think things are going. So it's sort of looking for a lot of feedback to see how people are feeling with me in the role. And that's kind of the way that I learn.
I would imagine every day is different, but can you go through a quote unquote typical day and talk about what it is that you're doing? I think in the business community, people don't think this, but from the outside, I see people thinking of CEOs as high back chair, signing checks, um, and that's kind of it, iron fist, whatever. But what does your day? I'm sure it's you're pulled in a million different directions. But what does that typically look like for you?
I am spending most of my time engaging with different groups here and then our operators in the restaurants and team members in the restaurants. So, for example, this week I will have run three, four, five, something like that, what I call small circle sessions where I'm bringing 7 people in from our support center is what we don't call it corporate here, so a support center. So all the different functions, they had to sign up for a time so they could come in for an hour, and I literally just asked them to introduce themselves so everyone can get to know each other. We're relatively small, but still there's a lot of new people. So get to know people's backgrounds. And then just 2 quick questions. What are you really passionate about working here? What's great? What do we have to hang on to? And then 2, what's really frustrating in your role that maybe we can address and fix? So those are really helpful for me in grounding, like where are we at culturally in this organization and what do we need to do to improve upon? That's one. We also had our operations team in this week. We have folks who are directly in contact with all of our restaurants. They oversee 20 to 25 restaurants, and so they're trying to coach our operators to really great performance. I spent 20 minutes with them just listening, but also providing my perspective on where I think we are for the business right now. We had a senior management team meeting, so that's all directors and above. That was an all-day meeting yesterday where we're going over the progress against our priorities and what we need to do for the back half to close out really strong. And then I kicked off what we call a situation assessment that I had prepared so that they can utilize like the information in terms of where are we at in the business now to work on what their priorities for next year should be. Now they'll go off and work on presenting what they think their priorities should be. The leadership team will come back together and say, based on what they believe, because they're the frontline folks, and what we see from a strategy standpoint, what really should our priorities be? So spent some time doing that. This morning, I spent an hour thinking through how I want to open next week's team meeting. Once a month, we do an all team meeting. So we call that Conversations, which is a cute name. And I want to put a lot of thought into how we open those um, for a few reasons. One, so people sort of, again, know the situation that we're in. Like the business is doing really well, but feel good about that. Why are we performing well? And then a little bit of inspiration and mindset in terms of how do I want us to operate as a team? What have I heard from all of them in terms of what's going well? Where can we get better? So I spend a lot of time preparing for how I show up in front of people so that that time is as valuable for them as possible. I don't like winging it in situations like that. We can do that in some meetings, but to me, their time is very valuable. So I spend a lot of time thinking about how I want to show up. I will likely at some point today look at the financials that we would have closed from June and so see business performance, although we get daily reports. So that's not, I'm pretty sure I know where we ended. Um, and then I also today will call an operator who opened a new restaurant this week. I let them get through the first week and then I call at the end of the week just to see how things are going. Some of our other folks, like Craig Culver in particular, and our head of operations, they call early in the week to congratulate them on their opening. I call later in the week to see how they're doing. So
I will say, in any of your meetings, don't touch the batter on the onion rings. If that comes up, leave it alone. It's fantastic. So,
deal. I love our onion rings too, so I'm fine with that. So on Monday, I've totally left that out. We had an hour long, we have what we call menu strategy meeting, which are the best meetings you can have because we have an amazing chef now. She started with us in January. and I got to try three new pub burgers and some new cheese curds. So yeah, I get really good meetings like that too.
When are those meetings again, and where are they?
About every 6 weeks. I'll forward you the next one. You just have to
Please
come up
do.
to Wisconsin.
Yeah, you've got my email, so let me know. Let's go back to Illinois, and then we'll kind of work our way forward again. You mentioned being able to get into the business school at Illinois, but why even apply there? What was the thought, and what led you to Illinois and ultimately to what's now Gies?
This is always a lackluster answer, so sorry for that. But I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and Illinois was, if you got into that school, that's where you would go from our school. And so I didn't even consider other locations or other areas. I'm coming into school at that time pre-internet and social media. It's not like you would be researching a lot of different things. Of course, you could, in a career center or something like that, but I live 2.5 hours away from Illinois. That's where you went if you, like I said, were able to get in. So there's not a whole lot of thought other than that's a great school and I'll get a great education and it's a great value. And some of my friends were going there, but not all of them. So you get meet new people. So there was just a lot of reasons why, but not a lot of thought behind it.
Hey, I applied to one university and one university only, and it was Illinois as well. So now you stayed and went way farther than I did, but we our story is similar at the beginning. What was it about Geese or the Illinois College of Business at the time that you feel was incredibly helpful to your career? I'm sure there's lots of things, but just talk about your experience there and how you felt you were prepared by the time you left.
I always just felt like, so I love school and I love being taught different concepts. And I felt like the professors at Illinois really took that seriously. Now I don't have comparisons other than my grad school to other schools. So maybe that exists everywhere. I don't know. But they were so invested in what they were teaching. They went so deep and they seemed to care about people that I think um, that meant a lot to me. I felt like I got a great education, but then I also got this great, big university experience. And I mean, it was very different back then. I mean, I drove on Green Street recently and I was like, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. I was very lost. But you get the charm of the quad. And I was in a sorority, which was amazing. But it's like the education part was so solid. But then there's all this wrapped around it too that just made it really for me a perfect experience. I'd go back in a heartbeat.
You left Illinois. You got your master's. Spent time in sales, but what led you ultimately to Culver's specifically, and how did that sort of trajectory go for you?
Sure. So, my first real marketing job was actually in Minnesota, with Conagra Foods, and I loved that. But I wanted to get back closer to home was still Illinois, and so Minnesota was a little further as I was having a family. So I was pregnant with my second child and wanted to get back closer to home. So fortunately got a job with Kraft Foods. The Oscar Mayer business unit used to be headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin. So I spent 10 years there on 9 different roles, actually. Oscar Mayer has a ton of categories and brands that they oversee, fun things like Lunchables and Boca Burgers and all kinds of fun things. So amazing education going through all of those jobs there. Unfortunately, the world changes and Kraft and Heinz merge and it's, run by 3G and all of those fun things. And so they were moving to Chicago at that time. And I was in Madison with a young family and just didn't want to make that move. So I actually spent 2 years with American Family Insurance, which is another great company headquartered here in Madison, Wisconsin. And an amazing education in insurance and just how companies run that aren't consumer packaged goods, which was not as good of a fit for me. And so it's just a different process that I loved the CPG world. And I loved food marketing. So when you compare that to insurance, as great as those roles are and as important as those are, when the opportunity came up to get back into food marketing with the posting for the at the time vice president of marketing role, I jumped at it for a couple of reasons. Like I just said, marketing food is the most fun in my opinion. But also, I loved Culver's from living here. I didn't know about it actually before I came to Wisconsin. We didn't have too many in Minnesota at that time, and there were none in Illinois when I grew up. Um, and so I was new to it, but that was the place that we would go at work for lunch if like we wanted a really great lunch out. Like that's where the team would go. And then, like I said, I had a young family. So if we wanted a great night out, an easy night out with young kids, that's where we would go. And so I loved the feeling of being at a Culver's. So the combination of my love for the brand and then it's back into food marketing. I mean, I couldn't have wished for, a greater opportunity. And thank God they took a chance on me because there was a little bit of hesitation in the fact that I hadn't worked on restaurant brands for sure from some of the people internally. Somehow convinced them that, like, I promise you I can do it, and got over that hump. But I mean, it wasn't a given for sure.
Could someone have convinced you sitting in a Culver's with two young kids, just trying to get them to eat their burger and not make a mess and act normal in public, that you would one day be the CEO of the company?
Oh, absolutely not. I remember I was hired and within a few days we had what we don't call our annual meeting with all of our operators. We don't call it like a convention. We call it a reunion because it does feel much more like a family here. But I had to stand up on stage and introduce myself. And the one thing I said was like, it's the coolest thing in the world that I get to work at this brand because my kids love it. So I couldn't even believe I got to work here, much less, I mean, this role, give me a break. I would have never.
You mentioned them being willing to take a chance on you not having worked in food service or restaurant brands before. Um, I find it interesting that a lot of CEOs, and if you look at a lot of big CEO hires at companies that everybody would know their names, a lot of them don't necessarily have experience in that field. So that tells me something, that experience in the field is less important than the ability to lead. What what do you think makes a good leader, and why can someone who might not know much about the restaurant business, for example, be able to come in and successfully lead a company like that?
So I fully rip off Simon Sinek all the time, everything he speaks about,
Same.
everything he writes about. And so it is as simple as the line that he says that he got from studying like the military and Navy SEALs, but leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. That is as simple as it gets. So that's why I have small circle sessions with people to understand how they are feeling. The team here, and the operators in the restaurants and the team members in the restaurants, they're doing all the work. I do none of the work, none. I create nothing anymore. I don't even create TV commercials anymore. So my job is to understand, do they know where we're going? Do they have the tools to get there and the training and the support and their leadership? And do they feel excited and inspired to get there? That's where I focus all of my time. And to me, I can't imagine an industry that doesn't work in. If it works in the military, I mean, it's got to work in other industries. So it really is as simple as that. I think you can learn the tactical things, right, of most industries, probably, maybe not. I'm sure, like, I can't go to NASA. Like, there's places, things I can't learn for sure. But in general, most businesses, I think you can pick up the tactical parts of those as long as you get the right people and the right team and you inspire them and you have a vision for where you want to go. It's only about that.
Without giving away any internal secrets, um, what is it that you are trying to instill in your team and your operators and those in your charge that makes Culver's different than any other place that a person could choose to go for a similar experience?
So the way that and there's a ton of background as to how we got here, and we can articulate that. But the differentiating factor for Culver's is we say we sell butter burgers and fresh frozen custard, but it's really all about the people. And a lot of companies say it's about the people, but we actually mean it. So when we show up here, the job of this support center is to make our operators successful. We don't it's aggressive to say we don't care about our profits here because of course we do, but we never talk about those. We don't talk about how many restaurants we can open. We don't, all we care about, and if you ever watch anything that Craig Culver says, it's all about one successful restaurant at a time. So growth, profits, all of that is just not the focus. That has been the result, which is great, 1,011 restaurants and a ton of success, but all we care about is serving people. So we are the support for our operators in the restaurants because that is a very hard job to run a Culver's. It takes way more people and it's much more complicated than most of our competitors. We care about our suppliers, so we don't battle with suppliers. It's always a win-win because we want to source the best ingredients. We care about our team members. If you talk to most team members in our restaurants, they feel like they're part of that operator's family. We don't have investors in Culver's, we have owner operators. The people here feel like their job is valuable because they're supporting those people. So all we do is talk about people, 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 and we mean it. Again, I think you will hear that at a lot of places, but if you dig deep and are they really living it, it's less so.
I know you've just started as CEO, but as CMO, is there something you're most proud of? A campaign or a success or an idea? I mean, were you the one behind what can we make fresh for you today? Was that your brainchild?
No, I think where did that? That actually came from. We do ethnography research sometimes, and there's a huge misunderstanding about a lot of things in the Culver's brand. But the fact that it takes longer is because we're making it fresh. But
Sure.
people didn't know that, especially if you're new to the brand. Like the fact that you have to pull up. If you have to pull up after a drive-through window anywhere else, it's because there's a problem. Here, it's because
Right.
we're making it fresh. So that might have been somebody in operations actually that came up with that one. The thing I'm most proud of, and it certainly wasn't a me thing, it was our team here with our agency, is 4 years ago, better articulating why we're different. And that was the introduction to From Wisconsin with Love, Welcome to Delicious. So we always said welcome to delicious, but we realized over time that had become a little bit less differentiated. I mean, a lot of people feel very welcome at many of our competitors, and a lot of them have very delicious food. So we're like, well, why can we say that better than anyone else? We have this whole paragraph of the brand idea that articulates that, but it's because of where we started in Wisconsin, this tiny little town here on the Wisconsin River. Um, Believing that people coming into our restaurant, they were our friends and neighbors. The farmers who were growing our food, like we knew those people. So this whole idea of community and you give back in your community because they support you, not just because they support you, but it's sort of the symbiotic relationship. And the genuine care for people is so embedded in our DNA that we can articulate that. What's interesting is when we said From Wisconsin with Love, we were like, that's not going to resonate in certain states, right? Like we're in Florida, like they don't know what that means. What's crazy is if you look up like pop culture references of Wisconsin, there's a ton of them. They're in a ton of movies, like which is really interesting. And so like there is this idea of what Wisconsin is all about dairy and friendly and all of those things. And it's true. And it's also true to our brand. And so to me, adding that phrase totally changed our marketing. It changed the entire campaign. And we've had insane success over the last few years, like well beyond most of our competitors. Certainly, the industry isn't growing and we continue to grow. So it's been very successful. So I love that part of it.
Have you ever considered a chicken scribbling in bad English on billboards to eat more beef?
No, but that is a great campaign too. That's a really good one.
I think the version of it might be taken, but keep it in your back pocket.
Be taken. Yes, yeah. Trust me, we watch them closely. They are a brand we very much admire.
Well, I have noticed, and I don't know, I'm sure it's intentional. I don't know if it's a direct result of that competitor, but I have noticed the my pleasure response as opposed to you're welcome when you say thank you. So I can tell there's at least somebody paying attention.
Well, that one's interesting because that actually did start with Craig and his and Lee and their family when they started. There's certain things you're just not even allowed to say around here. Like if somebody says thank you, you can't say no problem. Like there's just certain things we would
Hmm.
never say. So as much as it looks like maybe we copied that, that technically was here before as well. So
I love it.
we're very similar brands, very similar roots as well. Like we actually got to go visit their offices and they were incredibly hospitable to us, but a lot of parallels certainly between the families and the businesses.
For students today who may be getting ready to choose their school of choice, who are in school now, who are terrified of the future, or who are dreaming big dreams and don't even realize that becoming the CEO of a major brand is an option for them. Do you have advice that you would give if you got to speak to a class at Gies today, for example? What would you try to instill in them?
It's always twofold for me. Get as many experience as you can. So I talked about 9 different jobs in 10 years at Oscar Mayer. A lot of those were just lateral moves. You learn something new in every single one of those, and so I feel like I have a nice toolkit of like, oh well, tried that thing before and it kind of worked. Maybe that would work in this situation. So I believe, like, don't think that you have to get your first job and that's where you need, and I know nobody thinks this anymore, but you're going to stay there for 30 years and do the exact same thing. I don't think that necessarily builds a great skill set. But the other thing is, put your head down and work hard in those jobs. Like I was, there's a lot now, it feels to me like, what's next and what opportunity can you give me? And, and it's fine to like be out looking for new opportunities, but if you head down, work really hard and people will see that and they will either give you other opportunities or you'll see, oh, that team could use help on this. I'm just going to go help over there. Like give more than is expected. It totally gets recognized. I've never this sounds terrible, and I know no one's supposed to take this advice. I've had very few career discussions in my entire career with anyone that I have worked for. I just don't, and the opportunities come because it's like, how can I do the best possible in this job and beyond this job? And then things seem to happen coming out of that. So I realize it's probably the opposite. We're all told to ask for what we want, and oh, this like, what's your 5-year plan? It just wasn't the way that I operated.
I always say ability, availability, humility. You want to be good at what you do. You want to be able to work whenever you're asked, and you want to be easy to work with. And if you do those three things, that will take you a long way eventually. So
I'm feeling that for sure. I like that.
please do. It's all yours. All right. Well, a couple of things. One, I know where I'm going for lunch today.
Get our new chicken sandwich. We just launched a few weeks ago. Brand new crispy chicken, spicy and grilled, all
Ooh.
significantly better than they were before.
All right. I was going to ask you for a suggestion, and I got it unsolicited. So thank you. All right, I'm going to go try that. What is your go-to? Like, and now I know some people say when they've worked at a restaurant for a long time, it's like, man, I've had it so much, I don't eat it very often anymore. What is your go-to when you're at a Culver's? And I'm sure you're at them a lot.
Yeah, and I will go today also. Now that we're talking about it, then I can't avoid it. Actually, so this also two-part because one of the best things is because I do go a lot because especially if we're out visiting with operators, we always have lunch with them first in the restaurant. And so on those weeks when you're 3-4 days back to back in the restaurant, it is very nice to have variety. So I do love most of the things on the menu. And so thank God I can like one day get a salad, one day get chicken, whatever. Today will very likely be single butter burger cheese, and I do ketchup. No, sorry, mustard, mayo, grilled onions, pickles, and lettuce. That's
all right.
The best way to have that burger. The grilled onions are amazing. So
I typically do the bacon deluxe, and I try to always say single because I don't. Last thing I need is extra calories in my lunch. But sometimes I forget, and I'm never sad when I get two.
Really full, but not sad, yes.
Be sure to join us for the next Gies download. In the meantime, you can learn more about the Gies College of Business at giesbusiness.illinois.edu.